ashes, wings on my back, stay lit like a matchstick. We ain't coming back, I swear. Just let go and see what happens. Gotta let go to see the magic happen. They got us a quick change, so we like them in phase. I just bought a new watch, time to make my wrist ring. The zero gravity keeps elevating me.
Alright.
Oh my god. Yo guys, what is up? Max on Borderlands 3 video, and today we're going over Brisket Breaker Amara, a shotgun Amara build using a class mod that I haven't used in a very long time. This build genuinely smokes enemies, and speaking of smoking, Chipotle's new smoked brisket is now available. Thanks again to Chipotle for sponsoring this video. They just launched their new smoked brisket meat option, which is responsibly raised with no added hormones or antibiotics. I ordered the smoked brisket burrito, and let me tell you, this thing slapped. The meat is smoky, it was charred, it was tender, and it actually had a little bit of kick to it, which I wasn't expecting. It's seasoned with fire roasted jalapenos, which gave it that nice little kick to it that complemented my cheesy burrito so well. It's brisket done the Chipotle way, easy to order via the Chipotle app or their website. Thanks again to Chipotle for sponsoring this video. Now let's get into the guns and gear. Now, this is a shotgun Amara build, and the reason we're going to be using shotguns is because we want to be as close as we possibly can to enemies, and the reason for that is because we are making the absolute most out of Amara's personal space skill. Now, this is genuinely one of Amara's best skills in her entire tree, and it's going to give us up to 108% bonus damage based on how close we are to enemies. Now, the range of personal space is ridiculous. Like, I could be standing up here and the enemy could be over there, and I would still be getting a little bit of bonus damage from personal space. But for maximum damage, you are going to want to be as close as you possibly can get to enemies, basically barrel stuffing them. And the way that we're doing this is we're basically just running around with the Breaker class mod, which is going to give us damage reduction. Now, you could also use a Brawler class mod. I do want to mention this real quick because it is cooler to use like purple class mods. No one ever makes purple class mod builds. The Brawler can go into +3 into personal space. It's the only other class mod that can, and give you some points into Samsara for even more gun damage. So that makes this a great option. The worst things about going the Brawler versus a legendary class mod is legendary class mods can come with 3 passives, meaning that if you are going to go for a Brawler class mod, you're going to lose one of these possible passives for like action skill, cooldown rate, Jacob's weapon, critical damage, and shotgun damage, versus the Brawler can only have 2 of these things. And the Brawler is also going to give you that damage reduction, which isn't the most amazing thing. It's only 29% damage reduction, and Amara's got lifesteal, but it is just nice to have. So either or, the Brawler is probably the cooler pick, but you are actually in the long run kind of losing out on too many things to really justify it. So I've been using the Breaker, and hence the name Brisket Breaker. Now, we're pairing this with 250 phase cast shotguns to hit as hard as we possibly can, and we're just spamming phase cast up in enemies' faces. The phase cast is going to help us with our damage because we're speccing into a decent amount of action skill damage. So we can do a little bit more single target damage to bosses with these shotguns with our action skill, and we're also using 250 phase cast, even more gun damage. We're trying to get these things to hit as hard as we possibly can. Now, the other best option to use here is Ties That Bind. I think we can all agree that Ties That Bind is Amara's best action skill, so if you wanted to use that with the kill stack annoyed, that would also be incredible. You could argue probably even better, but a little tired of using Ties That Bind. I wanted to use phase cast. I have a lot of fun using phase cast, so that's why I did that. We're pairing this with the Revolter shield. The Revolter is just so much damage for both your action skills and your weapons. 200% shock damage. It gives a little bit fire rate, but the fire rate isn't really going to matter. Any grenade, I just have fish slaps because my fish slaps have all the ASEs, and I don't throw grenades on this build, but fish slaps would help with the ground breaker damage because we are spec'd to melee, so a fish slap's actually a pretty good choice. And then I'm using a Jacob's Company Man. My Jacob's Company Man, not very good. I don't love farming for the Company Man, but I've got crit damage and damage. You could either use a Jacob's Company Man or a Pearl. I never really get to use the Company Man because I never make builds that are only using one type of weapon. I'm using all Jacobs, so I prefer using a Jacobs Company Man, trying to get that crit damage and that damage rolls. And then obviously if you can get some good passives here, cooldown, crit damage on Jacobs, shotgun damage, mag size, area of effect damage, all would be really, really nice. I don't have any of those, but that's all good. But yeah, Jacob shotguns, my favorite is the Hellwalker. The Hellwalker is the best. My second favorite is the Garcia. The TK's Wave you could use pretty well. The Robin's Call and the Dakota are also very strong choices. But the Hellwalker is, I think, just the absolute best one you could use here, especially because we're speccing so many points into Infusion. All right, let's talk about the skill tree. Now, showing on screen is the skill tree for Brisket Brawler Amara. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is why I'm specced into Find Your Center, Jab Cross, and into Illuminated Fist, because it's a lot of melee for a gun build. First off, when we punch things with our melee, we're going to give ourselves a little bit more gun damage. This gun damage is absolutely trivial, doesn't mean anything, but we are going to get 30% more action skill damage, which is quite nice. Plus, Find Your Center and using melees when we're using shotguns is a really, really good way to get bonus damage and kind of combo with the use of Groundbreaker. We're going to be doing a lot of damage very quickly, and we can follow up with Groundbreaker on enemies to do even more damage. Plus, we've got a Fish Slap equipped, which is going to be getting these melee damage increases. So when you're comboing your shotgun and then you're getting around with your melee, it turns into a pretty fun playstyle, because Find Your Center is going to give you like that little bit more melee range, and you kind of just like fly around with your melee and your shotgun and just get in people's faces, and we're expecting to do enough damage reduction that you're not going to be getting like instantly killed. We've got arms deal, we've got vigor. Vigor also, remember, is going to give us not only team movement speed, but movement speed, and it doesn't proc off your action skill. It's going to proc off of any kill. So anytime that you kill things, you're going to get this movement speed, and it stacks indefinitely. Which is amazing. So you're getting a ton of movement speed with this, getting a little bit more movement speed with mindfulness, and a little bit shield regen for our shield, which is super, super important. And Samsara, because we're going to be smacking people with our action skill, and that's one of the main reasons I wanted to go and not use Ties That Bind, is because you can't use Ties That Bind with Samsara. This is going to give us even more gun damage and some pretty powerful health regen. All in all, works out really great. I didn't spec into heavy range just because I'm using shotguns, but this splash damage is just overall nice to have. In Blue Tree, big things I want to transcend for that crit damage. We need cooldown. You really getting cooldown is going to be super important on your class mod. I would prioritize cooldown on your class mod more so than shotgun damage or Jacob's crit. Yes, more damage is good, but that cooldown is going to allow you better uptime of your Revolter, better uptime of Laid Bare, better uptime of Transcend. So cooldown is super important. Cooldown usually not a problem with Phaserker Amara, but we're not using a Phaserker, so I promise you'll get more out of cooldown than anything else. Wrath, Remnant. You could take this 1 point out of Alacrity and put it into Do Harm. The reason I'm spec Do Harm where I never spec it in Ties That Bind builds is because I actually want my phase cast to hit hard. I personally love using Reverberation. You can use Reverberation and hit ridiculous damage if you go through enemies. Tandava is also a solid choice, but it also is going to cost you more cooldown. So Reverberation has been my personal favorite. I just use it with the lifesteal. You could use it with either Allure or Revelation. Honestly, either or is great. Capstone, super important. Double cast that, get double stacks of Transcend for that 54% crit damage, which is super important with shotguns. Your way of playing this build is you want to hit headshots with your shotguns. Please, please, please shoot the headshots with your shotguns, because that's going to get big kills for you and generate overkill, and that's what's going to allow you to chain kills with this build. You're going to notice that you're not instant one-shotting everything if you're not chaining your overkill. So make sure that you're killing something and then hitting a headshot on the next kill, which will give you more overkill, and you can just keep doing that and just get ridiculous damage and ridiculous mobbing potential with that. And then lastly, Red Tree. Nothing too crazy here. Illuminated Fist for that melee damage, turning into elemental, so we heal off of it. Steady Hands for the accuracy. Accuracy is super important. A little bit of lifesteal, conflux, forceful expression, definitely needed indiscriminate. And yeah, guys, that is it for the build. I hope you enjoyed. It's super different, but this build is genuinely a ton of fun, and if you're looking for a badass Amara build, can't recommend this one enough. I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Peace. I was putting in the